Let me tell you exactly how it all started, and be warned, this isn't your typical first day of school story. The moment Miss Caroline Pierce walked into Jefferson High, half the room froze, while the other half burst into muffled giggles. Why? A rumor had already slipped through the halls that she resembled an actress from certain grown-up films. One junior even whispered, "She's got that star vibe. You know, from those websites." All it took was that nasty little comment to light a spark in the rowdy front row. No one expected what would happen next, least of all those troublemakers who thought they could break the new teacher in record time. A wave of tension rippled from desk to desk as Miss Pierce stepped closer to the whiteboard. She had no idea someone had scrawled a provocative drawing in the corner. It featured a stick figure labeled Miss X-rated. Two seniors, Malik and Dylan, chuckled under their breath, pointing at the crude sketch. Another, with sly eyes, recorded everything with his phone, presumably for the entire school to snicker at later. Carolyn paused, brushed a loose strand of hair off her forehead. The hush of expectancy stretched. Then she caught sight of the drawing. For a moment, her cheeks flushed a faint pink, but she didn't storm out. She simply inhaled, turned, and faced the entire class without blinking. "I see," she said, letting the tension coat her voice like cold steel. Not a scream, not a shrill protest, just a level calm that made every set of eyes widen. "We've got aspiring artists in here. Anyone want to claim it?" Her gaze skimmed the silent rows. Malik shrugged, cocky grin plastered on his face, while Dylan gave a lazy wave, as if to say, "So what?" The entire classroom bristled with anticipation. Usually, fresh teachers either yelled or scurried off. Yet Miss Pierce held her ground with eerie confidence. She let another quiet second pass, then calmly reached for the board eraser and wiped away the scandalous scribble. Across the hall, Mr. Jenkins, the biology teacher, noticed the commotion and peeked in. He had witnessed many teacher breakdowns over the years, but the absolute stillness in room 12 startled him. It wasn't the typical rowdy meltdown. Instead, there was a standoff. Miss Pierce, in a fitted blazer that complemented her delicate frame, kept her expression poised. The rumors swirling about her adult star look clung to every glance from the male students. She looked radiant, but not in a way that signaled vulnerability. Something simmered beneath her polished exterior, something no one anticipated. As Mr. Jenkins wandered away, he wondered if she'd last the week, or even the day. Then, in the far back row, Damien, the unofficial king of Jefferson High mischief, decided to fire the first real shot. A balled-up paper soared toward the front, aim at Carolyn's midsection. With reflexes like she'd trained for some bizarre circus, she sidestepped. The projectile smacked the whiteboard behind her, unfolding on impact. The note read, "Hey, Star Lady, can I get your autograph?" followed by a crudely drawn heart. An explosion of laughter ruptured from the corners of the room. Caroline stood there, letting the echoes subside, one heartbeat at a time, until the laughter fizzled out on its own. She delicately picked up the paper, turned it around, and raised a single eyebrow. "That's bold," she murmured, resting the note on the corner of her desk. "I'm impressed you spelled autograph correctly." She paused, scanning the perplexed faces. "But if that's your best shot, you'll have to try harder." A slow wave of shock spread across the room. No one expected such a measured response. Damien, tall and broad-shouldered, flicked his attention to Dylan and Malik. All three shared a fleeting look of confusion. This woman wasn't rattled. She didn't flip a desk. She wasn't even threatening detention. It was as if she'd just brushed away a fly. Already, Dylan's bravado wavered. One of the more observant girls, Tasha, who usually stayed quiet in the middle row, took notice of Caroline's stance, shoulders squared, chin raised. eyes shining with something that wasn't anger but seemed far more daunting. Tasha felt an odd wave of pride watching this new teacher hold her own. She'd witnessed countless newbies buckle under peer pressure, especially with harsh rumors. Tasha remembered last year's fiasco. A teacher rumored to be an ex-stripper got teased relentlessly until she quit. But Miss Pierce seemed different. Tasha couldn't quite place why. The bell rang, but no one budged. It was as if they were stuck, collectively waiting for Caroline to either flip out or flee. She simply cleared her throat, allowed a brief semicolon of silence, then gestured to the door. "Well, that's the end of first period," she announced with a half-smile. "If you need comedic relief, come back next class. I've got plenty of material." Her voice dripped with playful sarcasm that hovered just below insult territory. The students rose, some snickering, some caught off guard, and filtered out into the hallway. Damien lingered by the door, scanning her from head to toe, as if trying to pick apart her facade. She looked right back at him, unwavering, until he finally turned and left without another word. When the room was empty, Caroline exhaled, pressed her palms on the desk, and let a tidal wave of tension roll off her shoulders. She'd faced day one's opening volley, but the rumor was more vicious than she'd expected. According to the chatter, some junior recognized her face from an adult content site. Though it was just a wild rumor, she'd never posed for anything like that. Ironically, she had a twin cousin rumored to have dabbled in questionable modeling. But that was another story entirely. Now, the rumor had mutated into a monster that threatened her professional dignity. Yet, her gut told her to stand tall. Years ago, she'd endured worse in a battered foster system where intimidation was currency. Nobody could break her spirit that easily. Still, she felt a knot tighten in her stomach, knowing day two might be even more intense. Word spread through Jefferson High like wildfire. By lunchtime, people whispered about how Miss Pierce had shut down the star joke. Some found it hilarious. Some admired her cool composure, while others took bets on when she'd crack. Meanwhile, administration had their own skepticism. Principal Duarte, a woman in her late 50s with piercing eyes, had witnessed teachers crumble under lesser humiliations. She debated whether to address the rumor or wait to see if Caroline could handle it. She decided to hold off, suspecting that Caroline might be able to resolve the situation on her own. Damien and his cronies, fueled by arrogance, schemed in the cafeteria. "She thinks she's untouchable?" Damien muttered, eyes scanning the bustling crowd. "Let's see how she handles a little next-level prank." Malik nodded, glancing toward the table where Caroline ate her sandwich. "Dilan Gurinnet. Dude, I've got an idea. We slip something in her desk, something that'll confirm she's not so innocent." The three laughed, apparently deciding the rumor needed a real prop to fuel the gossip engine. That afternoon, during a class lull, Dylan sneaked a small pink envelope into Miss Pierce's top drawer. Inside, he placed a falsified card with an explicit message, implying Caroline was filming private content. The vile note included a reference to "search your name online if we want proof." By the time the last bell rang, Caroline discovered the envelope. She read it once, expression darkening with each line. She didn't tear it up. Instead, she filed it away in a folder labeled Evidence. Next to her lesson plans, if the boys wanted war, she'd respond. But on her terms, day two dawned bright. Scorching, sunshine, flooding the campus. Students ambled to class. Gossip swirling about the pink envelope rumor. Some folks claimed it proved Miss Pierce moonlighted as an adult actress. Others insisted it was all forged. Caroline walked into her homeroom, greeted by a mixture of gawking stares and mocking smirks. She set her bag on the desk, noted the glint in Damien's eye. He looked far too confident. Then, In the next breath, she realized her coffee cup felt oddly light. She took off the lid, discovered it had been filled with glitter and confetti. The moment she lifted it, a flood of sparkly bits cascaded onto the floor. Her lips formed a thin line. She raised one palm to signal she was about to speak, letting the swirl of confetti settle. "All right," she said, voice steady as a drumbeat. "It appears we're feeling creative again." A hush swept the room. She glanced at Tasha, who offered a sympathetic shrug. Then, Caroline marched to the front, rummaged through a cabinet until she found a small handheld vacuum. With calm efficiency, she vacuumed the mess, bit by bit, without raising her voice. The entire room watched in silent fascination. The defiance they'd hoped to provoke fizzled into confusion. Instead of tears or shrieks, there was only an unwavering sense of control. Dylan rolled his eyes, stage whispering to Malik, "She's probably used to picking up glitter after her." "You know, star performances." Several students cackled. Caroline turned off the vacuum, tapped a fingertip to her chin, then pivoted toward Dylan. "Interesting remark. Should I consider you the comedic relief in this class? Or do you prefer the role of sidekick to someone else's misguided show?" The tension snapped like a taut wire. Dylan's face twisted between laughter and indignation, unsure how to respond. That's when Damien took center stage. "All right, star teacher." Damien boomed, arms folded across his chest. "We get it, you're calm. But guess what? Nobody here respects you. You're a joke in a tight blazer. Sorry if that offends your ego." He flicked a paper wad that soared and landed near Caroline's shoes. A few laughs echoed in the corners. Caroline's eyes locked on Damien's, unwavering. She glanced at the clock. About 30 seconds remained until the period ended. In those seconds, she took a long breath, exhaled slowly, and signaled with a single finger for Damien to stand. He hesitated, blinking at her audacity, but something compelled him to stand up from his chair, meeting her gaze across the room. "Damien," she began softly, "I've faced bigger bullies than you, bigger lies than the rumor you're spreading." The hush in the classroom grew more profound. "I survived a foster system you can't begin to imagine. I came out stronger, not broken. So if you think cheap shots will scare me, you're in for a shock. Here's the deal. You have exactly 30 seconds to decide whether you're going to keep acting like a wannabe ringleader or if you'll try something new like learning." Her tone never rose above a measured calm, but it sliced through the tension like a blade. Damien's jaw twitched. A muscle in his neck jumped. Everyone counted the seconds in their heads. Hack, he glared, searching for a witty comeback. Fear, fem, 6. He glanced at Dylan, who suddenly looked away. Malik shifted uneasily, while Tasha peeked over her notebook with bated breath. 7, 8, 9. The atmosphere felt electric, as if any second a spark could explode into chaos. At around the 15th second, Damien snorted. "You think I'm scared of you?" he barked. Though his voice lacked the bravado it held moments before, Caroline let the silence linger. "Sexton, Sutton, Atten." She stepped forward slowly, each heel tap echoing on the linoleum. "If you're not scared," she said, "why are your hands shaking?" Everyone turned to stare. Damien looked down at his trembling fists. To his horror, they quivered. A flush of anger and maybe shame flooded his cheeks. 20, 21, 22, another wave of hush. By the 25th second, he seemed to deflate, as though some hidden truth hammered at him from within. 6 October, 7 October, 8 October. He swallowed and mumbled, "I don't want to push it." Arsha Joel, Sanch. When the period ended, the bell chimed, slicing through the tension with abrupt finality. Students slowly gathered their belongings, whispering under their breath. Damien remained standing for a heartbeat longer, Cornered by the calm in Caroline's eyes, then he slumped into his seat, refusing to meet her gaze. Dylan and Malik slipped out of the room quickly, though they shot uncertain glances over their shoulders, as if they'd lost a piece of their bravado in that silent countdown. During the passing period, half the school heard about the 30-second stare-down. The rumor that Miss Pierce was a fragile, glamorized teacher started morphing into a legend of an unshakable presence. Even the jocks from the football team started muttering, "Yo, that new teacher is kinda hardcore." Meanwhile, those who ridiculed her the day before found themselves at a loss for how to keep fueling the gossip. She hadn't given them an outburst. She hadn't demanded any administrator punishment for the glitter stunt. She just kept teaching, calmly, methodically, almost daring them to push further. Principal Duarte caught Caroline in the hallway. "I've been hearing stories," she said, her tone guarded. Caroline nodded, guessing the principal would either warn her or praise her. "They say you handled some pretty personal rumors with grace. Yvonne Pre. But if you need me to step in," she paused. Caroline simply smiled, though it was a weary smile. "Thank you, Principal. But I think I can manage. If it escalates, I'll let you know." The older woman regarded her thoughtfully, then nodded before walking away. Later that afternoon, Caroline took a moment to reflect on her life before Jefferson High. She remembered being 14, stuck in a rundown group home, cornered by older teens who found pleasure in teasing younger kids. She'd learned that tears only encouraged torment, and anger led to fights she couldn't win. She discovered that unyielding calm often rattled bullies more than aggression, yet behind that veneer of composure, there was a swirl of vulnerability. She wanted to help these kids, not just embarrass them. She brushed off the memories, forced them down, deciding a fresh approach might be needed if the harassment persisted. Unsurprisingly, the next day arrived with fresh drama. Caroline spotted a group of boys at the door: Damien, Dylan, Malik, and a smaller freshman named Jamal, who'd been roped into their circle by intimidation or misplaced admiration. They whispered, exchanging conspiratorial nods. Caroline's gut told her something was up, but she stepped inside, determined to tackle any challenge head-on. As the final bell rang, students settled into seats, but an awed hush settled, too heavy for a normal morning class. Suddenly, Damien muttered, "Guys, now." A fraction too loudly. Dylan reached under his hoodie, tugging out a small black bag. Before Caroline could react, he tossed it under her desk. A hissing sound emerged. Then pink smoke billowed from the bag, enveloping the air around her in a sweet, sugary haze that smelled like cheap cotton candy. Students gasped and coughed. A few near the windows jumped back. Malik snickered, filming the scene with his phone as Caroline vanished in a fog of pastel mist. In that surreal swirl of pink, laughter rippled around the corners. Though some students looked nervous, Tasha scrambled to open a window, letting the smoke escape. As the pink cloud dissipated, Caroline emerged, wiping her watering eyes. Her blazer was coated in a light dusting of strawberry-colored powder, her hair tinted with cotton candy pink. She blinked away the sting, then took another measured breath. No screaming. With a calm flick of her wrist, she peeled off the blazer, revealing a simple white blouse underneath. Using a tissue from her bag, she dabbed at her face, clearing the powder from her lashes. The class stared in anticipation of fury, meltdown, or at least a shout, but Caroline set her blazer aside and turned to face Damien, who stood poised behind Dylan's phone. "Quite the show," she remarked, voice slightly hoarse from the sugar residue. "Did you rehearse your lines?" That single question, delivered as if it were a casual observation, knocked the wind from Damien's bravado. He frowned, not expecting that reaction. He motioned to Dylan, who awkwardly kept filming. Caroline walked right up to the phone's camera lens, eyes steady, posture unwavering, despite the pink residue clinging to her hair. She paused long enough for the tension to simmer, then she spoke. "If you plan on sharing that footage, be sure to tag me. I'd love the extra publicity." A whoosh fell, as if the entire class collectively forgot to breathe. This wasn't the meltdown they wanted to capture. Instead, it was a teacher who refused to be a victim, who handled a humiliating stunt with a near unshakable grin. Dylan lowered the phone. The triumphant smirk replaced by genuine confusion. Malik muttered a curse under his breath. Damien clenched his fists, uncertain how to maintain control. "Why aren't you yelling? Why aren't you calling security?" he spat, every word coated with disbelief. Caroline shook her head. "Because that's too easy," she whispered. "Bullies usually want attention. They hope for outrage. If I got you suspended, you'd brag about it all over social media. This way, you're stuck with me. Day after day, class after class, no escape. Now, let's get back to actually learning. Shall we?" That was the moment Tasha realized the dynamic had shifted irreversibly. Damien, Dylan, Malik, all of them shared a look that screamed, "We've lost." They had poured their creativity into humiliating her. Yet somehow, she stood stronger after each prank. The entire class felt the power shift, like someone had flipped a cosmic switch. An undercurrent of awe rippled through the students who yearned for someone to stand up to the bullies. Caroline's unwavering composure gave them hope. Still, Caroline wasn't naive. She knew that humiliating them, even passively, could spark retaliation. Sure enough, by lunchtime, rumors flooded the school's social media channels. Some accounts posted short clips of "cotton candy teacher," with text overlays mocking or praising her. Comments ranged from "OMG, she's got to be an actual adult star for real," to "she's epic, she didn't even flinch." The conflicting narratives fueled curiosity. Students from other classes started swinging by her room, hoping to glimpse the unshakable teacher or see what she'd do next. Principal Duarte summoned Caroline to the office, asking if she wanted to file a formal complaint. Caroline weighed her options. Part of her wanted to show these bullies a consequence that would stick, maybe a suspension or a parental meeting. But her instincts from foster care told her that dealing with a bully by force often just shifted the conflict underground. She respectfully asked for time to handle it her way. Duarte, hesitant but somewhat impressed, granted her that freedom. After school, Caroline found a scribbled note slipped under her classroom door. It simply read, "Star or not, you're tough. Sorry." No signature, but the handwriting looked shaky, as if the writer wasn't sure they wanted to apologize. She tucked it into her folder, the same one labeled "Evidence." Maybe she was reaching them in some small way. She sighed, pressing her fingers to her temples, wishing the entire fiasco would end. However, a flicker of determination pushed her forward. She refused to let them see any vulnerability. The next day, tensions flared from the moment the 7:45 bell rang. Damien and Dylan approached her desk before class, flanked by Malik, who always had that phone ready. "We want to talk," Damien said. Caroline gestured for them to speak up. "In private," he insisted, glancing at the clusters of students settling in. Caroline shook her head, letting a subtle grin form at the corners of her mouth. "No secrets. You've pulled enough stunts behind my back. Anything you have to say, you can say here." Dylan twirled the phone between his fingers but didn't start recording. "Look, we get that you're not just some fragile girl who's going to cry in the bathroom. Fine. But these rumors about you being some star from a site, everyone is talking." He trailed off, looking uncertain. Malik quickly jumped in. "Is it true? People claim they found some model with your face. They keep bringing it up, saying you have a double life." Caroline took a slow breath, scanning the room at large, noticing how quiet it had grown. Everyone wanted the truth. The scandal, the confession. She spoke carefully, measuring each word. If I looked like any celebrity, that wouldn't define me as a teacher or as a person. Rumors are powerful because people feed them. You want my answer? It's simple. None of it is real. If someone's face online resembles mine, so be it. I'm here to teach, not prove my innocence to a mob. The raw honesty in her voice made some students squirm in their seats. Damien's lips parted, as if he'd prepared a snarky retort, but no words came out. Sensing the weight of the moment, Caroline decided to lay down an ultimatum that was gentler than expected. If you still believe the rumor, that's your choice. She added, if you want to keep teasing me or calling me star teacher, fine, but the more time you waste with gossip, the less time you have to actually learn something that might matter for your future. You might find yourself failing this class if you spend all your energy filming me. Dylan swallowed, apparently remembering he was teetering on the edge of academic trouble. Malik looked away, as if stung by the reminder that actions do have academic consequences. Damien's eyes flitted over the crowd of onlookers. Everyone waited for him to lash out again, but he didn't. He mumbled something under his breath, stuffing his hands into his pockets. Caroline resumed class, ignoring the stares and whispered comments that lingered. The tension lingered in subtle ways. Sometimes Dylan would crack a joke referencing adult entertainment, just quiet enough to fly under her radar. Other times, Malik would post memes on social media trying to keep the rumor alive. Yet, they no longer pulled elaborate stunts in front of her. Each time they tried to bait her, she responded with an unruffled calm that sucked the oxygen out of their teasing. Over time, fewer students found it funny. The spectacle lost its edge when the intended victim refused to break. Late one afternoon, about 2 weeks after her first day, Caroline found Damien pacing near her desk after the final bell. He glanced over, looking decidedly less confrontational than before. Miss Pierce, he said, voice faltering, I gotta talk about something. It's personnel. Intrigued but cautious, Caroline nodded, gesturing for him to take a seat. The classroom was empty except for a few stragglers packing up their books. Damien hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. Eventually, he explained that he'd been dealing with a messy family life, an older brother in trouble with the law, a father who disappeared last summer. He was angry and felt powerless. Picking on teachers had become a twisted outlet for his frustration. The rumor about Caroline gave him an easy target, but seeing her stand firm, unafraid, actually made him question the path he was on. He looked down, scraping a sneaker across the floor. I know we messed up, he admitted, and the stuff about you being some star was just random. It was easier to give you a label than to see you as an actual person. Caroline listened without interrupting, letting him vent his guilt and fear. It reminded her of her own younger self, lashing out in group homes. When he finally quieted, she cleared her throat. You made my first weeks pretty tough, she said softly, but I'm not here to hold grudges. If you need help, if you want to do better, I'll support you. You just have to respect me. And you have to respect yourself enough to try. Damien nodded, his shoulders sagging. As if a weight had been lifted, she offered a tight-lipped smile. Patting his shoulder, it's not too late to turn things around. Word of Damien's unexpected talk spread, though quietly this time. A few days later, a whispered rumor circulated that the notorious troublemaker had asked for tutoring after school. Caroline arranged short sessions, discreetly, so he wouldn't lose face with his peers. Dylan tagged along once, complaining about his grades, but it was obvious curiosity fueled his presence. Malik showed up at the library with them a week later, making jokes to mask the fact he was genuinely studying. Tasha, seeing the change, volunteered to help with worksheets. Slowly, an odd alliance formed. By the start of the next month, Caroline's classroom had transformed from a den of tension to a space where laughter felt more genuine. The rumor about her adult star look hadn't vanished. Entirely some corners of the school still latched onto that scandal. But the hype was dying down, overshadowed by the real story. The new teacher who turned mockery into motivation. One morning, as she was laying out pop quizzes, Caroline overheard a couple of sophomores whisper, "That's Hershey's, the unstoppable teacher everyone keeps talking about." She smiled to herself, remembering how humiliating and abrasive that first day had been. Now, students actually wanted to attend her class, even if they occasionally teased her about her calm demeanor. If unstoppable was the label she'd earned, it beat the alternative of unreliable gossip magnet. In the staff lounge, some teachers gossiped about how Caroline had let bullies walk all over her. Others admired her strategy, noticing that Damien's crew seemed less disruptive in other classes as well. Principal Duarte quietly observed, stepping in when necessary but generally trusting Caroline's method. The hallway talk shifted from skepticism to respect. After midterms, a surprising event occurred. Damien's group apologized, formally standing at the front of the class while everyone else watched. They'd orchestrated it themselves, which made the gesture even more meaningful. Damien cleared his throat. "Look," he began, "we did some messed up stuff. Tried to break you, tried to paint you as something you're not. Honestly, we're sorry." He turned to Dylan, who nodded in agreement. While Malik just shifted uncomfortably, a wave of tension whooshed across the room, replaced by subdued applause from the other students. Caroline swallowed a lump in her throat. She offered a small nod, meeting Damien's eyes with genuine appreciation. It wasn't a grand spectacle, nor did she demand they beg on their knees. They simply expressed genuine regret. She accepted it graciously, though she threw in a reminder that respect needed to be consistent, not just for show. Afterward, Tasha cornered Caroline by the lockers, saying in a low voice, "You really turned them around? People think you're a magician or something." Caroline laughed softly, shaking her head. "Hardly. Just lived long enough to know fear rarely solves anything." Of course, life at Jefferson High wasn't a fairy tale. Scuffles still happened in the cafeteria. Random graffiti decorated restroom walls. But in room 12, something had undeniably shifted. Students who once ridiculed Caroline's rumored persona found themselves captivated by her lessons, perhaps fascinated by the question of how someone rumored to be adult star material could also be the strongest role model they'd encountered in years. A few rumors continued cropping up here and there, especially from new students who heard the gossip secondhand. Each time, Caroline handled it with the same calm. If a note ended up on her desk with some lewd joke, she corrected their spelling or grammar and returned to the lesson. When Malik asked outright if she was truly that actress, she just arched an eyebrow and said, "If you believe everything the internet says, you might also think the moon is made of cheese." That disarming wit kept the rumor from regaining any real traction. By the semester's end, grades went up in her classes. Even Damien, whose average hovered around a D, clawed his way to a B-. Dylan started taking film club more seriously, shifting from pranking teachers on camera to editing short videos for school events. Malik joined the track team, channeling his energy into something constructive. Tasha's confidence soared. She participated in debates and even considered running for student council. On a chilly winter morning, after final exams, a small group of students gathered in room 12. They wanted to celebrate surviving the semester, so they brought donuts and coffee as a peace offering. Caroline came in, spotting the treats. "Is this some kind of sugary sabotage?" she teased. half expecting another pink smoke device. Damien smirked. Nah, we learned our lesson. Thought we'd show some gratitude. That's all. The sincerity in his tone touched her more than she'd like to admit. She took a bite of a glazed donut, letting the sweet taste linger on her tongue. It felt symbolic, something sweet after a sour beginning. She gazed around at the group. These were the same kids who once hurled insults and called her a star from a questionable site. Now, they found her unwavering approach more appealing than any rebellious game. Their transformation wasn't a miracle, but a testament to resilience meeting empathy. As they chatted about holiday plans, Caroline's mind wandered briefly to that rumor how it almost defined her first few weeks. Had she broken down back then? Would things have ended differently? She realized that bullies often try to exploit any perceived weakness by refusing to be shattered. She undermined their entire strategy. It wasn't about being invincible. It was about being unafraid to stand firmly in her truth. That afternoon, while leaving campus, Caroline noticed a note taped to her windshield. Her stomach clenched, recalling the earlier pink envelope fiasco, but this note was different, scrawled in shaky handwriting. It read, "Thank you for not giving up on us." Signed, The Cotton Candy Crew. She stared at the words, a smile quirking her lips. Perhaps the entire ordeal left them with a strange sense of camaraderie. She peeled the note off, carefully placed it in her bag, and drove away, heart lighter than it had been in weeks. In the weeks that followed, talk of the adult star lookalike teacher dissolved into Jefferson High folklore, replaced by stories of how that same teacher unwrapped potential in students who'd nearly given up. When the gossip occasionally resurfaced, it never gained traction. Caroline had proven that labels, no matter how scandalous, didn't define her. She was, above all else, a guide who wanted her class to believe in their own worth, even if it took a series of outrageous pranks to get there. The grand irony was that, in the end, the bullies ended up learning more about self-respect and accountability than they ever expected. The vow, in 30 seconds, they were begging for forgiveness, rang partially true. They might not have literally begged on their knees, but their pride sure bowed under the weight of Caroline's unshakable poise. With every failed attempt to humiliate her, they realized they were only humiliating themselves. Before winter break, Caroline gathered the class for a final address. She briefly spoke about how rumors could poison trust, how appearances are often deceptive, and how it takes real courage to treat people with decency. She even laughed about the cotton candy ambush, joking, "It took me a week to wash the pink from my scalp." The students erupted in good-natured laughter, each recalling that bizarre day. The sense of unity in the room was palpable. After the bell rang, concluding her last class of the semester, she stood at the door to say goodbye. Damien, passing by, gave a half smile and murmured, "Later, Miss Pierce, thanks." Dylan patted her desk in a friendly gesture, while Malik waved, phone tucked safely in his pocket. No pranks in sight. Tasha was the last one out, her eyes shining with admiration. "You changed this place?" she said quietly. Caroline gave a gentle shrug, responding with a playful grin. "Maybe we all changed it together." The corridor emptied. Caroline walked back into her classroom, swirling with memories of that first humiliating day, the obscene rumor, the insulting drawings, the autograph note. She rested her hand on the desk, exhaled, then let a faint laugh escape at the thought of how quickly things had pivoted. She had turned adversity into an unlikely catalyst for respect, and in that single quiet moment, she recognized her own growth. If someone had told her 6 months ago that she'd handle false claims of being an adult video star and still earn the respect of the rowdiest students, she might have burst out laughing. Yet here she was, living proof that unshakable calm can command a room more effectively than shouting ever could. And so, The story of Miss Caroline Pierce spread beyond Jefferson High. People described how bullies had tried to tease her, how the rumor of her double life made her the subject of countless jokes, and how, in less than 30 seconds of unwavering eye contact, she could dismantle the illusions of even the toughest troublemakers. It wasn't about superhuman bravery, it was about the right balance of empathy, mental fortitude, and confidence in her calling. She went on to guide countless other students, each with their own struggles and stubborn streaks. Whenever new troublemakers thought they could unnerve her by referencing that old rumor, she'd just give that same quiet half-smile and continue teaching. Word had spread. Miss Pierce, rumored star or not, stood taller than any gossip. By the following year, her classroom was known as a safe space somewhere. Students found fairness, discipline, and surprising acceptance all in one place. To this day, the phrase, "bullies tried to teasing the new teacher in 30 seconds. They were begging for forgiveness," remains an exaggerated tagline around campus. Students retell the showdown as though it were a folklore event. Some say Damien literally dropped to his knees. Others claim Dylan ended up apologizing publicly online. Nobody can quite pin down the exact version of the story, but what never changes is the core truth. That moment taught them the value of self-restraint and respect, imprinting a lesson they'd carry long after graduation. And if you wandered into Jefferson High, you might catch a glimpse of Caroline Pierce strolling through the halls. Calm as ever. Some seniors would discreetly mention, "Watch out, that's the teacher who doesn't break under pressure." Fresh freshmen might curiously ask, "Is she really some big star?" And every time, those in the know would roll their eyes, muttering something along the lines of, "Trust me, you don't want to test her. That rumor is ancient history anyway." And, in the end, the truth glistened far brighter than any slander could. A rumor sparked by ignorance was extinguished by unwavering resolve. A group of hardened teens found themselves at a crossroads, guided onto a better path through gentle but unyielding mentorship. And a teacher who arrived labeled as an object of ridicule walked away a hero in her students' eyes. Sometimes, the only thing stronger than gossip is a person who refuses to let it define them. And perhaps that is why the legend of Miss Caroline Pierce kept growing long after the semester ended. Many students carried her story into lunch breaks, hallway chats, and even into the next school year. Parents heard whispered accounts of how she'd tamed the wild side of Jefferson High without so much as a single outburst. Some doubted the rumor, saying it was too good or too surreal to be true. Others insisted they had witnessed her calm dismantling of pranks firsthand, describing every detail of that fleeting pink fog and the meltdown that never happened. Principal Duarte quietly acknowledged that Miss Pierce represented a refreshing approach, one grounded in understanding rather than knee-jerk retaliation. It was a rarity in a world where discipline often meant punishment, not patience. 2 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, a school assembly was called to honor faculty achievements and student milestones. Most of the teachers sat together on the stage, but Caroline was seated among her class, by choice. Damien and Dylan glanced over at her, even from afar. She could sense their nervous energy. A rumor had surfaced that Principal Duarte intended to commend Caroline publicly for her exceptional work, and the boys, once so eager to see her fail, now hoped to witness her success. When the principal announced a special recognition for outstanding dedication and resilience, the applause began hesitantly. Yet, within seconds, it erupted into a roar that filled the auditorium. Caroline rose, blinking against the spotlight, unsure how to process the magnitude of the cheers. She glimpsed Damien, who gave a small, respectful nod, and Tasha, who mouthed the word "congrats" with shining eyes. Even Malik, perched at the edge of a row, lifted his phone knot to record a cruel prank. But to capture a moment of genuine celebration, Caroline approached the podium, feeling her heart drum against her ribs. She thought back to the first day's humiliating jokes and how easily it could have broken her. Now, as she scanned the sea of faces, she realized they were no longer the same. A sense of shared accomplishment pulsed through the crowd, binding them together in an unspoken acknowledgement of how far they'd come as a school. She took a breath, steadied herself, then spoke softly but confidently into the microphone. "None of us are perfect," she said, "but that's never stopped us from trying to be better, day by day." Oh, her short speech wasn't a grand monologue, but it left an impact. Students clapped in genuine admiration, having watched her prove that fortitude and respect can emerge from the nastiest rumors. Damien even joined the standing ovation, perhaps quietly remembering that day he'd faced her unwavering stare. Afterward, Caroline excused herself from the rush of congratulatory hugs, slipping into the corridor to reflect, leaning against a hallway locker. She let her eyes drift closed, recalling how quickly bullies had tried to define her with their twisted brand of teasing, and how swiftly she'd shown them what real strength looked like. The final bell signaled the end of another school day, and she walked toward her car feeling an odd mixture of relief and pride. A gentle breeze rustled fallen leaves, carrying with it faint echoes of laughter. Moments like these, she realized, defined the true essence of teaching, not just imparting facts, but uplifting those who scoffed at compassion until they recognized its undeniable power. As she climbed into the driver's seat, one lingering thought gave her heart a quiet thrill, that no matter how outlandish the rumor or how vicious the tease, the right balance of grace and resolve could turn even the hardest cynics into reluctant believers.